What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats of every one of the weapons in Black Ops 4 multiplayer. In today's episode, we're going to be moving on to the second tactical rifle, and this is the ABR 223. First up, as always, let's have a look at the damage profile of this gun. The ABR deals 38 damage up close and 32 damage at the longer ranges, which means in core game modes it's always going to be a 4 to 5 shot kill, and in hardcore it's going to be a 1 shot kill all the time unless you're shooting through something. What this means in core game modes is you can't get a 1 burst kill because this is a 3 round burst gun. You can't get a 1 burst kill in core. Our rate of fire is 800 rounds per minute within each burst, so that's just the 3 bullets that fire. They fire at 800 rounds per minute, but then in between bursts we have a 125 millisecond burst delay. Unfortunately, we have no ability to run rapid fire on this, and this means our statistical minimum time to kill is 350 milliseconds in the 4 shot kill range and 425 milliseconds in the 5 shot kill range. This time to kill is kind of average. It's not good by any means, and the big thing with this is there's no ability to get a faster base time to kill with the ABR 223, unlike many of the other guns in the game, which can benefit from headshots, or they have various attachments like rapid fire in order to lower that time to kill. With this gun, you're stuck with that time to kill. That's the best it's going to get for you. As for armor, if you use the ABR against an armor user, it's always going to take you exactly 1 extra shot to get a kill, assuming you're hitting body shots. As for our ranges, the ABR doesn't really have the greatest range, especially for a tactical rifle. It drops off from that 4 shot kill to that 5 shot kill at 20 meters. Also, when you put a suppressor on this, that range will be reduced by 20%. As for hardcore, like I said earlier, the ABR will always be a 1 shot kill in hardcore game modes as long as you're not shooting through something. And this still applies with the suppressor as well. Moving on to headshots, we get a standard headshot multiplier of 1.1, which takes our headshot damage profile to a 41-35. What this means is headshots are literally useless for the ABR. They do absolutely nothing to help you. You could be at point blank range and hit every single bullet to the head. It will have no impact whatsoever on the number of shots to kill, which is a little bit unfortunate, I feel, because the base time to kill, like I said, it's average at best. It's not great by any means, and headshots simply don't help you, and there's no ability to use high caliber on this gun either. So unless you're going for those camo challenges, don't even bother aiming for the head. Next up, let's have a look at the hipfire properties, and as you can see here, it has the same hipfire spread as all of the other tactical rifles in the game, but with this gun, we have the ability to use both Laser Sight 1 as well as Laser Sight 2. Now with either Laser Sight 1 or the combination of Laser Sight 1 and 2, this is what our hip spread will be when standing still, so we get a roughly 30% reduction to our hipfire spread. The key difference between just having Laser Sight 1 though and having both Laser Sight 1 and 2 comes when you are moving. With Laser Sight 1, when you move around, your hip spread will still increase slightly. When you combine both Laser Sight 1 as well as Laser Sight 2, it becomes fixed at that point. Even if you're at a full sprint or if you're jumping, it's always going to be at that fixed amount of spread. This brings us to idle sway, and as you can see here, there is definitely a noticeable amount of idle sway with this gun, which means that first shot accuracy, especially at longer ranges, is going to be a bit difficult with this gun. You might not always be able to hit that first shot as accurately as you'd like. As for recoil, each burst you can see will kick upwards slightly, and it appears to be somewhat random as to whether or not it kicks slightly left or slightly right, but the key with this is it always returns back to center between each one of your bursts. So it's accurate in the sense that if you're putting out multiple bursts, at least your first bullet of each burst will be hitting in the same spot. However, you won't always be able to accurately predict where your burst is going to go. At close ranges, this won't be an issue for you at all as long as you're not aiming for like the tip of their head so that the recoil takes you above them. As long as you're aiming center mass, which you should be with this gun, you shouldn't have too many issues with the recoil. Now, if you want to maximize your accuracy with the ABR and you want to be able to pick people off at longer ranges more accurately and keep all of your shots within the burst hitting, you can use the grip attachment, which will tighten your bursts up quite a bit, and this is actually very effective if you plan on using the ABR beyond that medium range sort of gunfight. In addition to that, some of the optics will affect your recoil as well, and it turns out the recon sight is the best optic for reducing your recoil within each burst, and you can even combine recon with the grip to get the tightest possible recoil pattern to be as accurate as possible. Moving on to our magazine capacity, we get a 30 round magazine with 90 total starting ammo, and with extended mags we can bump this up to 42 rounds with 126 total starting ammo. Our reload add time is pretty much average for the tactical rifles, but it is a little bit on the slow side when compared to a lot of assault rifles and SMGs at 1.67 seconds. Our aim down sight time is pretty much standard for the tactical rifles as well as assault rifles at 300 milliseconds, but with QUICKDRAW we can bump this down to 250 milliseconds to be more in line with the SMGs. Our sprint out time is also 300 milliseconds, but with Gung Ho we can drop this down to 175 milliseconds, or if we break our sprint by aiming down sight, we can have a sprint out time of 0. Our movement speed is standard for tactical rifles as well as assault rifles at 95%, and same thing goes with our aim down sight strafe speed. This is also standard at 40%, but with the ABR we have the option for both of the stock attachments. With stock 1, we get an aim down sight strafe speed of 66%, and with stock 2 equipped as well, this will bump it up to 72%. So those are all of the important stats of the ABR, but we also have an operator mod available for this that kind of changes how the gun works. This operator mod is the repeater, and with this, it makes it so you can just hold down the trigger and it will auto burst, and each subsequent burst after the first one will fire faster and faster and faster. With a standard 30-round magazine, by the time you get to the end of the magazine, the rate of fire within the burst is roughly 1,200 rounds per minute, which is very, very fast. And not only does our rate of fire within each burst increase, we also get a decrease to our burst delay between every burst as we continue firing, down to around 75 milliseconds from 125. Keep in mind though, if you stop firing and then start firing again, if you take your finger off the trigger, it does reset this. So you can't just like fire off a bunch of rounds to begin with in order to get that ramped up speed and then get yourself into a gunfight and expect to have a faster burst. As a result, this doesn't have any effect whatsoever on our statistical time to kill in a 1v1 situation where you're hitting all of your shots. And the simple reason for this is your first 2 bursts are firing at the exact same speed as they would be without this operator mod equipped. So this doesn't really change your potential time to kill in game. However, if you're dealing with multiple enemies or if you happen to be missing some shots, then the operator mod starts to become a lot more effective. So personally, I actually lean a little bit away from the operator mod because, like I said, in a 1v1 gunfight where you're hitting all of your shots and you're being accurate, the operator mod isn't doing anything for you, and it will cost 3 of your pick 10 points. So for me, I'd much rather stack up on many of the other attachments on the ABR or possibly some more perks. But of course, this one will come down to personal preference, and I know a lot of people that really enjoy using this with the operator mod, so I'd highly encourage you guys to give it a go and just see what you think of it. So now let's move on to my recommended attachments for the ABR before we get into some great example classes I have for you. So first up for optics, if you're trying to minimize your recoil, like I said earlier, the recon sight is the way to go, but this is a relatively slight reduction, and I don't really like the looks of the recon. It just doesn't really feel right to me. So instead, I tend to lean more towards a reflex or an elo sight, and I really don't like the default sight on the ABR, so I'm always running either a reflex, an elo, or sometimes that recon sight. As for the other attachments, I tend to not bother with the laser sight at all. It just feels unnatural to be hip firing a burst weapon, so generally I don't bother with hip fire or laser sights or anything there. QUICKDRAW is one that I run most of the time with the ABR just to get that fastest aim down sight possible so I can snap onto targets. Also, stock is another go-to with this, just allows me to strafe a bit more in gunfights to make myself a harder target to hit. If I'm trying to play at slightly longer ranges with this, I will definitely be running a grip as well to tighten up that recoil. And I would say extended mags and suppressor are decent attachments as well if it suits your playstyle. I feel like extended mags is generally not required by any means, and with a suppressor, it really depends on the purpose of the class that you're using. So let's get into a couple example classes I have for you guys. This one right here is kind of my go-to ABR class setup at the moment. With this, we're using a reflex sight with QUICKDRAW, stock, as well as grip. We've got a stim shot on there, as well as the special issue equipment. For our perks, we've got Scavenger, Gung Ho, as well as Dead Silence. This is just a really good all-around sort of class for the ABR. You can be quite accurate at range with that grip attached on there. You can also snap on a target just fine with the QUICKDRAW attachment, and you can strafe in your gunfights. So it's pretty good at winning those gunfights, but like I said earlier as well, the time to kill is still just going to be average in its current state. Next up, we have more of a stealth flanking class. With this one, we're using an elo sight, suppressor, as well as a stock. Instead of stim shot, we've got acoustic sensor just to help us find our enemies a little bit better once we get up towards their spawn. Once again, we're using that special issue equipment. Our perks are going to be Engineer, Gung Ho, Dead Silence, as well as Ghost. Now, obviously, Dead Silence and Ghost are to make it so enemies can't figure out where you are, they're going to have a much harder time, because you combine that with Suppressor to stay off the minimap all the time as long as you're always moving. This one doesn't really rely on hitting people at longer ranges, so grip isn't really necessary. And unfortunately, we did have to make the sacrifice of QUICKDRAW if we wanted to get both Dead Silence and Ghost. As for Engineer, this is just a great all-around perk to get you around the map and figure out where the enemies are camping, or when they have equipment set up, you can see where it is, and this just helps you a ton with your tactical decision making. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the ABR. As for my opinion on this gun, I really feel in its current state, it's a little bit underwhelming. In the beta build of the game, it was very, very powerful, maybe even a little bit too powerful, and I think they went just a little overboard with the nerf to it. Personally, what I would like to see with the ABR is the ability to get a one-burst kill if you land 2 of the shots in the head. I think this would help the gun considerably without making it ridiculously overpowered. I really think it should reward accuracy as a burst weapon, and in its current state, I don't see much reason to use the ABR instead of the Swordfish, for instance, which does have a one-burst ability if you're using high caliber or the Pentaburst operator mod. So I really hope to see some adjustments to the ABR at some point in the future, but until then, it is a very usable gun. It's just not really that great. Of course, I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think of the ABR in its current state? Do you think it needs a buff or a nerf, or do you like it the way it is? Just let me know what you guys are thinking about it down below. Also, if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, as always, I will leave a link to the playlist down below. I've covered all of the assault rifles, and I've also covered the auger and now the ABR. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.